Okay, so it has come to the occasion in which uh, His Majesty and Her Royal Highness of Sweden have come to Canada, which hasn't happened in a long time. Not in recent memory. I don't remember any kind of hoopla or hootenanny or any kind of fanfare surrounding the Swedish monarchy coming to Canada, of all places. Now, many Scandinavian people immigrated. Sorry for that. Oopsie. Immigrated to Canada, and even Icelanders and other people to Canada, and especially to areas of central and northern Ontario. And interestingly enough, the airport here in Bracebridge, or Gravenhurst, really, is called the Little Norway Memorial Airport or something like that. So I look at this, they're really trying to get some work in here and some products produced. And the truth about the F-35 is that its production and development was delayed by thousands of hours because of the three different variants and because of the complexities of the American government, in which, the super PACs were lobbying, and then the senators were also strategically, let's say, jockeying for position, in which it becomes a make work project more than a defense contract, right? Because, well, I don't know. It's a long and complicated story, and if you are familiar with the Bradley and its story, then the story of the F-35 or the Aardvark, the F-111, are no different, in which the pipe dreams of military brass are, shoehorned into the basic requirements of what it actually takes to win a war. Now, there's lots of different opinions as to what actually wins a war, but when it comes down to it, it's not equipment, it's people. It's people. Let's look at aerostructures here. Now, there's a lot of propaganda surrounding the opposition to the Gripen, but for Canada's needs, we could have twice as many Gripens as F-35s. And when it comes down to it, if you look at the history of warfare, when you can no longer shoot and maneuver, it always becomes a war of attrition. And a war of attrition is a war of numbers. And that's exactly how the Americans overwhelmed the Nazi war machine, is because they bombed them into submission day and night. And then there's multiple faults or errors made by the Germans that Don't get me wrong, there were many errors made by the Allies, but the Allies were able, in the end, to exploit the geographic constraints of the European theater. The true victory of the Second World War was that they were able to cut Germany off from its raw resources. So what does this have to do with Sweden? Well, quite a bit if you actually listen to the stories and actually have read the accounts of the war and how Norway had something to do with it, and in how the German generals were attempting to invade up through the peninsula. Excuse me. And how the Russians also had an interest in dominating Scandinavia. Excuse me. Not everything is as you think it is. Now, the thing is that some, like I said before, because of the American war machine, some products and some weapons are not weapons. They're make work projects. But when you look at something like the Gripen, it is a purpose-built machine. It is not a make work project. Now, our politicians here in Canada, they hummed and hawed for over 20 years. And the people in the Puzzle Palace hummed and hawed for over 30 years. Trying to figure out, oh, hey, how do we do the thing? You know, how do we replace the Hornets? And then how do we replace the trainers at the same time? Each of these airframes is like worth like $80 million fucking dollars. How are we gonna pay for that? I seen like this thing recently. How about a Strike Eagle, an F-15E, is worth 80 or costs about $80 million per airframe. $80 fucking million. And it takes the resources of a government in order to keep them flying. Okay, I'm going to go back to Google here. Let's look at this quote. Right? This is a underdog story. Everybody loves an underdog story. Okay, let's look at what the first results are. I'm coming up to the top here. Which is better, the F-35 or the Gripen? This quote: "The F-35 is so far beyond anything that the Gripen can provide that anything you'd be saving in terms of money by going to a second fleet would be a loss. How much money and how much resources have been lost in the process of trying to produce the F-35? You don't see anyone talking about that. No, that's no, Lockheed Martin is sacrosanct. Don't say a thing about them. No, how dare you? How dare you mock Lockheed Martin?" We got to remember this all started with the competition between the F-35, the Eurofighter Typhoon, and the Super Hornet. And the Super Hornet, okay? I like this rendition here. Look at this. Yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool. Now, the Gripen is it's a specific aircraft for a specific role. And what the Gripen is really good at is countering Russian-designed aircraft. Because the Swedes are on the front line of any kind of hostile intent that may happen because of, I don't know, we keep poking the Russian bear because we need someone to fight. And we don't want to let the bear out of the cage because if the bear gets let out of the cage, it starts mauling people for all the right reasons. Let's be honest here, okay? This isn't just about Canada. This is about the United Nations and NATO, the North American Treaty Organization. And again, the big tech words, interlopability and commonality. Okay? Now, the Super Hornet had a high degree, relatively speaking here, of interlopability with the F-18. So we have Canada here. We have Legacy Hornets, which means like the C and D models. We don't have the same capability as a Super Hornet. But if there's something to be learned from any of this, it's that it's not the airplane anymore in modern day warfare that wins the dogfight. It's the missiles. It's the fucking missiles. And if you can't outturn in a circle dogfight, which is about it, 2 turns, right? 2 circles, 2 complete circles. That's what they're trained to do. 2 complete circles. And if you can't down them, then you run. And if you can't run, you're fucked. Turn circle fighting, okay? All you fighter pilots out there. Names and dates. Click, 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 right? With your pen. Click, 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 click. Names and dates. Let's look at the production rate of the F-35. F-35 production rate. And how many of our allies, have taken on delivery? And how low on the list is Canada? Like, this isn't just, as I said before, just about Canada. It's not just about the United States or Lockheed Martin or the military-industrial complex. It's also about the United Nations and saber rattling and all this other stuff. Oh, look how big my dick is. Look how big my dick is. This is how big my dick is. Look at that. Look at that beautiful F-35. And you know, like, I understand implicitly the challenges of production in manufacturing. Because you know what? I've worked in manufacturing. I've worked in aerospace manufacturing. I'm a fucking aircraft mechanic, for fuck's sakes. Okay, I'm not fucking playing around here. And the capability that they say that the F-35 has that the Gripen doesn't is complete bullshit. Now, what the model of the F-35 was sold on, oopsie, that's about the Emily Carr school getting, there we go. Gotta go sleepy bye-bye sometime. Memento mori. One day we all die. What that model is sold upon is the wingman drones, right? This futuristic concept that, oh, we don't need to put pilots inside of aircraft anymore, or that we shouldn't because we keep designing aircraft that are highly maneuverable and inherently unstable, and the only way that they fly is because of the computer and fly-by-wire protocol. Now, if Bombardier can actually has gotten its shit together, because Bombardier bought up Canadair, and well, of course, we produced the Hornets by license from McDonnell Douglas in Canada. I'm wondering if you're watching this little video here that I'm going to put up on YouTube, if you actually knew that the Canadian Hornets were produced in Canada. The Sabres, right? The F-86, the Canadian Sabres, were produced in Canada. Not in the United States, not in buttfuck Mexico. In Montreal is where those Sabres were produced. Correct me if I'm wrong. And those Hornets, you know where they were produced? They were produced in the GTA. So like it was Milton or Mississauga, whatever. That's where the plant was, at Pearson, if I remember correctly. Now, what I'm talking about here is that the F-35, right, its capability, and it says, oh, the Gripen doesn't have the same capability, but it does in cooperation with the Global Eye. And the Global Eye is, of course, the early detection and warning aircraft, and also it's basically an airborne AWACS, airborne area control aircraft. Excuse me. I've been watching all this stuff and how the government behaves and how the procurement process goes about itself for decades because, I'm a nerd and I've been trying to position myself as an individual with a lifelong passion for aviation and then a motivation to be close with the military. Because, again, I was in cadets for 7 years. Let's not forget that. And, excuse me, forgive me, I'm having a few tall boys. That cadets is a military apprenticeship. Let's be clear about that. Okay? For all those you taking notes in the back, the cadet program in Canada is a military apprenticeship. And I watched that video of Melanie Jolie. And again, because of how slowly we've been taking on delivery from Lockmart, it doesn't feel like just production delays. It feels like political positioning and favoritism. Now, personally, I got nothing against a Trump or his government. My problem is when the people that I support are not getting their dues and they're not getting what they need to do their jobs. And what we ask of them is a nearly impossible task because no one can figure out what it is to put a bullet in a rifle anymore. I don't know. It hasn't changed in over 250 years, but somehow it has. And that becomes the end of it. All right. And some people want to, shoot bullets around corners or whatever it is. So let's look at a picture of the Gripen. I see heritage in this aircraft. I do. Because, there's different variants of it. There's even a growler. Like the F4, it's not the F14, the F-18G, the Super Hornet version of electronic warfare. And that's a fair bit of ordnance there. And there's also this debate as to whether or not stealth technology is even relevant anymore. It's that age-old battle between arms and armament. That's pretty funny there. You see that? You see the crew? It only takes 3 people to service this aircraft. How many people does it take to service the F-35? Like, that's another question, right? How delicate is the F-35 versus a Gripen? Because there was an issue with the stealth coating on the F-22 a couple of years ago in which it was flaking off. But nobody talked about that. Oh, no, that's embarrassing. That's embarrassing. I got to tell you, okay, there's basically 2 kinds of missiles, right? There's the infrared and the radar lock. Or optical on the infrared, and the radar lock, like the AMRAAMs versus the AIM-9s. AIM-9X is the most current version. If I correct me if I'm wrong here. Okay. Now, think about the range that this radar array on the Global Eye, and this is a Canadian product. You got to understand, the Global Eye is based off of, guess what? The Bombardier Global 7500 or 8500 as it is right now. That's a Canadian jet that's been modified to suit the purposes for reconnaissance and observation. The long and winding road, I got to tell you, okay? I could go on for hours about this. Hours. We could have had new fighter jets 20 years ago. 20 years ago. Okay, let that sink in. You got to remember that eventually these airframes, they time out. They time out. You know what that means? That means there's stress cracks in the spars, the wing spars. Okay? An aircraft doesn't fly because of its fuselage, except in blended wing designs or lifting bodies. It flies because there's a spar, or a couple of them, or three of them, whatever the case may be, from wingtip to wingtip. Okay? And that vibrates as it goes through the air. It vibrates. And then it comes to a certain point at which the fatigue level of the metallurgy can no longer handle, excuse me, the stresses of dogfighting and maneuvering. It becomes a huge paperweight. And you know what? The Hornet, its time is getting very close to being done. Those airplanes, I got to tell you, if the center barrel wasn't done to them, again, correct me if I'm wrong if it was or not, if the center barrel was not replaced on the F-18s and the wing spars were not replaced, they will go one clap for effort. That's it. And fall out of the sky.